In the same way the Spirit helps us in our weakness, we do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. And he who searches our heart knows the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for God's people in accordance to the will of God. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called to his purpose. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And he also predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. The word and the reading of God.
Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus. Ave Maria.
Oh, to sing like that. That was beautiful. Thank you very much. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened last week. If you weren't here last week, we did a little thing last week. It was kind of fun. You all recognized me as a minister for the church and gave me my license, and it was an honor beyond belief. And I have to say that it was so... Last Sunday was kind of so overwhelming that on Sunday night, I didn't want to do a single thing. I just went to bed really early. I don't know if you've ever had a day like that. I was just kind of like, what do you do now? After something like that, where do you go? For those of you who aren't aware, last week we had, I think 12 of my friends came down and joined us last week, which was so nice to have people who'd been there all along my journey to be in the sanctuary when that happened, plus to have all of you here. It was absolutely amazing. When everything was over, 2 questions were asked to me over and over and over and over and over again. Anybody have a guess what people were asking me or saying to me? Why it took so long? That's good. Any other ideas? The number one thing that I was told after last Sunday was, your jacket's too big, get rid of it now. And when I watched it on the video, it looks like just waves are just flowing across my chest. So Cornerstones has been able to benefit very well from some jackets this week, and there's more on the horizon. The second thing that I was asked, and just hear me out on this, was I was asked, did I feel different because that had happened? Did God fall on me? Did I get a spirit? Did I feel called to preach occasionally from that moment forward? And I felt so guilty that day because I didn't feel different. I felt recognized for doing what I've already doing, if that makes sense. I wouldn't have got to that point if God had not been speaking to me along the journey my whole life. Does that make sense? I'm not ungrateful for what happened last week, but it's a recognition of what's already in place. When I was a young person, I went to a church that had probably 50 or 60 kids in the youth ministry. And it was surreal. We had puppet ministries and youth choirs and show choirs and all this stuff. It was just insane. But once a year we had what they called Youth Sunday. The youth in the church took over the church. They were the ushers, the music minister, the piano player, the preacher. They did the whole service. And a lot of people did it because they wanted to be there, but also we had it was called Astro World. It became a Six Flags park. So imagine Six Flags being the prize. If you participated in Youth Sunday, you got to go to the Six Flags trip when it was all over. So a lot of people came out of the woodwork, and the usher spots were filled like that. Everybody wanted to stand in the back and pass out bulletins. And I kept hoping year after year, and I kept pleading my case that I wanted to preach. We're talking like in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. I wanted to do that part of it. And every year, it's not that I was denied. I was just told that I was needed in another capacity to lead the music. And I fought it every single year. I was not happy about it. You know, I didn't play, and they had somebody else play, but it was my job to kind of get people singing and doing all of that, so I've been kind of doing that my whole life. That's what I was trained to do. But I went back and looked at how even at that young age, I kind of knew what I wanted to do with my life. I knew what felt right for me. And we're not going to rehash the whole thing, but many of you have heard my story and my journey before. But one thing about it is, I had reached the point, probably in high school, where I didn't want to continue living. Couldn't live the way things were going, couldn't stay in the church, couldn't go anywhere. And I went to a concert by a group called Truth. I don't know if you've ever heard of Truth. They were really big in the 70s and 80s. They toured on a bus all the time and were incredible. And I met a guy named Andy Chrisman, who went on to later form. Has anybody ever heard of the group called For Him? Yes. Okay, he's one of the 4 guys who were in For Him, all came from the band Truth. And I told him, I said, I've never met you before, but I need to let you know what I'm feeling and what I'm feeling about the concert tonight and all this. And he wrote down on a piece of paper, and I still have it in my house today. He just wrote Romans 8:28. And I went back and looked, and I just want to read that part of it. It's about on the 4th line down, about halfway through, and it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." And it took me a while to really get that whole word, all. All things can work towards the glory of God. Now this is just coming from Ken's book of the Bible, First Opinions 1:1. But sometimes God calls you to something, and sometimes God calls you through something. You have the strength to get from A to Z, and it may be part of your journey to run into someone who doesn't know how to get to Z. They're stuck in the middle of a nightmare, and there's nothing better to talk to someone who's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Do you know what I'm talking about? A lot of people can give you opinions, and they're wonderful and they mean well, but I want to hear from the people who've been there, done that. And that's one of the things that I feel like I can do for a lot of people on certain topics. I don't have the answer to everything. I will never be a Bible scholar. I will never be Reverend Michelle Nickens. But I can tell you what it's like to put down a bottle of alcohol. I can tell you what it's like to go to sleep and get up the next morning and keep on going knowing that you are loved. You may not be at that particular moment, but you will be loved. You never know where that church is. It could be a church in Reston, Virginia, of all places. You know, when I came from Houston, anybody ever told me that I would leave Houston to come to Reston, I'd be like, nope, not going to try that. But these gifts are what you get by going through things. And I believe that there are talents, there are gifts, there are passions, and it's what you do with them that rolls all into your calling. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos and read a lot of stuff on the internet, so you know it's true. And we talk about gifts and talents and passions and things like that. I have a passion for a lot of things that are not my calling to do. I love watching certain movies, I love seeing plays, and some of that stuff is fun to do, but it's not my calling in life to do that. I'm not going to be on Broadway, at least today, maybe tomorrow. But I was looking at some of the things that I just saw played out last week, and I got her permission, but I want to pick on Ivani just for a moment. Because leading up to last Sunday, Ivani and I talked, and she said, do you want just something simple, or do you want a full meal? And what did I say to you, Ivani? Something simple. Did anybody see something simple when you were downstairs last week? So many people are like, Ken, I was going to see if you want to go have lunch, but I'm kind of stuffed right now. And I was like, that's Ivani and everybody who volunteered. If you helped in any way, brought anything last week, would you just raise your hand? See, look at that. Most of the people in the room, thank you so much. My friends were amazed. They're like, do you do this every week? And I said, no, not now, but maybe one day. So I thought about trying to find a way to make talents and calling and gifts and all that kind of make sense the way I see it. A talent is making good meatloaf. Does anybody have a talent for making good meatloaf? I do not cook. If it cannot be microwaved or put on a drive-through, it will not be in my stomach. So a talent is being able to make a good meatloaf. But what do you do after that point? You eat it. What about if you have a gift of hospitality that says maybe you should share it, right? So you have your talent, I can make meatloaf. But I have a gift of hospitality, so I want to share the best that I have to offer with somebody else. That's my gift. And your calling is then to turn down and coordinate a whole meal. Everything that happened last Sunday is because at some point in her life, she learned how to cook one meal. Barbara with finances. Ernie with finances. There was a time that she added two numbers together. Who knew where it would lead us and how it would help save this church? Carolyn can edit a document better than anybody I know. Linda and these paintings. Zita and her prayers. We could go through everybody in this room. You have gifts. You have talents. What are you going to do with them in the next few months is what I want to ask you right now. We're preparing for the holiday season, right? Everybody's going to be getting in the spirit. We're going to put up the mitten tree. If it was up to me, it'd be up tomorrow. You know, if you know me, I'm ready for Christmas in a second. There may or may not be a few boxes of Christmas already in my living room waiting to be put out, but you can't prove it, so it didn't happen. But what are you called to do with your gifts? Now, a common thing is many people jump to the calling without focusing on the gift. You can remember how we start from the beginning. You have a talent, you can do something. Then you figure out how you can serve or give or bring that out to someone else. You're going to use your gifts to share with somebody else. Am I making sense? So I made my meatloaf. Now I want to share it. What do you think about that meatloaf? What do you care about that meatloaf? Why is it important to you? You don't have to justify it. That is your gift. That's what you're doing. Sharing is the gift. The talent just happens to be the meatloaf. And then where you're called to do that, it's different. Now, so many people will jump straight to the calling, and they won't focus on the gifts. Like me as a kid, I wanted to be on Broadway at the time. Now, did I want to pay attention in my acting lessons? Did I want to learn my lines? Did I want to do anything with my talents, much less turn them into a gift? Nope, I just wanted to go there. Anybody know somebody that wants the final prize but no steps along the way? So if you see something that you're talented at, like Linda, I have a feeling you've not loved every painting that you've made. I know you well enough to know there are unfinished paintings everywhere. But she's developing that gift. And she'll know when it's ready to take it to the next level. Everybody in here has that ability. Even in how you relate to this congregation, everybody in here brings something to the table. Kristen worked on music so that she could help bring her gifts to it, and she was called to help us out today. All for the benefit of God's glory in the sanctuary today. That's how it plays out. It's just amazing that I can look around so many people in the room and see the gifts. Morris will never admit to it, but on top of sound and lights and everything else, Morris has the gift of laughter and being our amen corner. Now, it's one thing to laugh. It's one thing to laugh during a service. It's another thing to laugh at the service afterwards. Same talent, wrong focus. Make sense? Morris knows how to lighten up the room. He's a wonderful cabaret MC. Everybody has these gifts. What are you holding back on? What are you scared to share with someone else? Maybe it's you make an incredibly good banana cream pie. That's what my grandmother made all the time growing up. Do you make one? Do you make one well? Are you going to practice on it, get it ready for the next time we have a cabaret or something else? Do you have something that you can bring to the table to be part of the benefit that happens at the church? Now, before some of you take it on a side road about, well, he's making me spend money and he's making me do this and making me go get lessons, it's not the case. Everybody in this room has a talent and a gift that's just waiting to be called. And it's who you are. Any of you want to sing sometime? I don't know who that could be. She knows who it is. Somebody want to sing again? I'm looking directly at her, Miss Brunson. You have these gifts and you have these callings. What are you going to do with them? The Greek word said callings are those things someone has been summoned or invited another to do. For instance, the gifts and the callings come from God. God is the giver of the gifts and the initiator of the callings. And when you are called, it will put you in a room with the right people to be heard at the right time. Make sense? But do we have to start with our talents? Do we have to start putting effort into it? Maybe we start with our passion. Where's your passion? Ivani, did you ever have a passion just to make a perfect dinner for somebody?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Many times.
So I'm going to tell them myself, and this won't be a surprise to the choir. I loved putting on our Christmas presentations every year. I love our cabaret shows. I have 4 of them already finished in a book form at my house right now. I write musicals all the freaking time. I put together Christmas concerts. We don't have a choir today, but we may have a choir tomorrow.
Amen.
You never know. So I want to be prepared, and it's just something, I'm so passionate about it that I can't not work on it. That's how I feel about where your passions are and your talents lie. When you lay in bed and you're thinking about how can I do that, and not only can I do it, how can I do it better? Now, this is where you get the voices in your head, right? You can't do that. You don't have a choir. Why are you planning a Christmas concert? Ken, you don't have an oven in your part of the house. How are you going to cook a meal? Grubhub, they deliver. That's all I'm saying. What can you do to bring your passion and start making it your talent? Then by using your talents for good, making that gifts. Then getting those gifts developed so that you can do your calling in life. And I have a surprise for you. You're not just called to do one thing. You can be called to do many things. You can be called to be a beacon of light in your place of employment. I am not known for that talent. I can be called to be the grumpy old man. That's the talent I have, flat out. Never been called for that yet, but I'm working on it. These are the things that we bring to the table. You brought them last week in abundance. The prayers and the friendliness, and you don't even realize it's a talent and a gift and a calling that you had to welcome all of the guests that we had last week. Everybody was greeted numerous times. I watched it happen. I watched it play out. Do you realize how good you are at that? When visitors come to this church, we may overkill them with welcomes, but I'd rather go to a church that tries too hard to welcome me than to a church that nobody even notices that I'm there. Amen. So if people feel a little overwhelmed, let them adjust. They'll get to the point, okay? So I'm not going to take up much more of your time today. I'm just going to ask you to think about one thing. We're going to walk through this together. What's one thing you're talented at? Got it in your mind? And don't be shy. It's okay to feel you're talented at something. What can you do with that talent for the benefit of others? So you know what you can do. Now you're learning how it can help somebody else. Now with that gift of helping someone else, how could you be called? Where could you be called? When will you be called? Anybody know that God's already calling? Sometimes we put them on caller ID and don't take that call because we don't want to have that conversation, right? Anybody ever get an idea when they're driving around? What if we did this? And then you shoot it down yourself before anybody else gets a chance. Anybody ever do that? I do that all the time. That's silly. No one will like that. That's ridiculous. Get that out of your head. I'm going to test you in a week. I'm going to follow up with this because I'm going to ask you what you thought about something you could try different for the better of the church congregation and those around you. Can you do that for me? All right. So I just want to thank you for your time today, and from a heartfelt thank you for what you offered me last week. It was absolutely incredible. Where it'll take me, I don't know. One place I know it's going to take me is to another Sunday up here with you all, hopefully sometime soon.
Amen.
I consider it an absolute honor to be up here. I don't want to get emotional, but it's, please, when I say that I didn't change last Sunday, that you don't feel that I haven't changed. My life has changed. If you knew where it was 20 years ago, you would never expect me to be here. But that's the funny thing about God's calling. Does anybody here drive by GPS? I promise this to be brief, but anybody drive by GPS? Since I had my concussion last year, one of the things that they've taught me to do is not remember driving directions. I just need to take one burden off of my mind. So I punch in every GPS address on my phone in my car when I go somewhere. Even to go to work every morning, I have a button that says work, and it tells me exactly how to get there. It takes my mind off of trying to remember when to turn and do all that, because I will go the wrong way. One of the funniest things I've ever learned is, what's her name called? Is it Williamson? What's her last name? Do you know what I'm talking about? The female, yeah. Marianne Williamson. She said this one day on Oprah, and it has stuck with me ever since. So let's say you figure out your calling, and my calling is to go sit with Zita right over here and talk to her. That's what I feel called to do at this moment. However, I decide to go this way. If my car is supposed to go that way, and I go over here, what happens to my GPS? What's that? Rerouting. I always said I could make $1 million if I had a voice on my GPS that say, idiot, turn left, But my GPS adjusts to where I'm at now to still get me to my final destination. I don't want you to ever go through your life thinking that if you took a step out of the right lane, if you made the wrong turn along the way, that calling is gone from you. It's never gone for you. God is greater than a GPS.
Amen.
She called it a self-correcting file, that whatever happens in your life, okay, that's happened, but let's go here. Now we'll fix this, and then we'll go here. I can go from A to B, but I can now go from A to Z and come all the way back around. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So whatever is in your head that makes you think you can't do what you know you're called to do, what you know you're talented at, and you know what you're gifted at, get it out of your mind now. Don't slow down the destination that God already has for you. The road is still there for you. All you have to do is open your eyes, open your heart, and follow. Amen. I've asked Zita to come up and do the prayers of the people for us.